So today we're going to take you on a tour of our shop here at Kibler's Longrifles. We built this shop around 2.5 years ago, 2 to 2.5 years ago, and it served the purpose very well. Prior to then, we were in a very small shop, maybe I think maybe about 500 square feet, and we lived in the back of it, so it was only temporary, but it gave us a start. So like I said, we'll walk you around the shop. I might not show you everything, but I'll show you a lot of what we do here. So a great place to start is look at some of our stock blanks here that we have in inventory. It's a good thing to have a lot of blanks to choose from, and it's good to have them sit around for a while too. That helps them acclimate to the environment here. It helps them stress relieve. It helps them dry out if they're not completely dry. So it's a real good thing to have a lot of blanks on hand. We typically buy wood in board form, and then we blank it out slightly oversized to our patterns, and like I said, allow them to sit around for a while before we use them. Now this is part of what you see here is a lot that we purchased that was already blanked out. These are a little bit bigger than we ordinarily would blank them out, but you know, it's some pretty decent wood, so it worked out to purchase that lot. And one side is we're always looking for good quality curly maple, so if you're watching this video and you have any sources, you know, let us know. It's kind of in short supply, and we're always scrambling to find what we need. So I might go to pull out a few blanks here to show you some neat ones here. Quite a number of neat ones here. This one's one that we kind of pulled out just earlier that has some kind of wild looking figure in it, which is pretty awesome, rather than just a normal stripe. It even has a few little spots of start of like little burls or little bird's eyes, which is neat. What else we can find here? We have some sugar maple, which is always nice. There's a piece of sugar maple, and the weight of the sugar maple is much more than the red maple. This one doesn't have, it's pretty modest in the curl, but we have some of them with a lot more figure. So anyway, just some neat stuff here. Trying to pull out, here's a neat piece, a little finer figure. Kind of a finer, more of like a quilted figure. On the quarter sawn face, it has a little finer stripes. So we have a lot of wood to choose from, and it's real good quality stuff. So in order to deal with boards, like you can see some boards over there on the floor, those are some boards that have problems. But in order to deal with boards that big and bigger, you need a big saw. So we purchased this Tanowitz 36-inch bandsaw. It was made in the mid-40s, I believe, and they're still considered, you know, one of the best saws ever made. Extremely heavy, you know, all cast iron, several thousand pounds. They spin quite fast too, so they cut very fast and efficiently. So it's almost a requirement when you're dealing with boards, otherwise you have to really struggle. So a big saw like this is something that's needed. And you have an outfeed table. There's a bunch of guns on it right now, but have an outfeed table that works real well for dealing with the big heavy boards as well. So I'm going to kind of skip over our process of machining the stocks. It's something that we don't talk about a whole lot, to be perfectly honest. You know, we're happy to share what we can, but that's something we don't choose to share right now. But we will show you some of the stocks after they're machined, what they look like. We have some real nice wood right now. Here's one with some very nice figure. This one's kind of interesting. It has a little spot there, but that's not much of a problem, and probably won't see it after it's stained. But it has some very nice figure in that stock. And this is the quality of the stocks after they come off our machine. And by machine, I mean a CNC machine. So we use a CNC process to produce all of our stocks, and it results in you know, these gun stocks that are extremely tight in tolerance and very repeatable, very finely finished. So it's really a huge step up from duplicators, and there's really no comparison between the results from the CNC process we use and other more antiquated processes. Developing those processes is extremely time consuming, and the cost of the equipment is very expensive, and it's not easy to do. It's a difficult thing to do, but it can be done, and once it's figured out, it works very well. So you can see this is some of our inventory. We try to keep quite a bit of inventory on hand, and we're constantly trying to inventory more of our products. It's a bit of a challenge for the products that we get from suppliers, but that's one of our goals this year, is to you know, try to develop an inventory so when somebody places an order, then we'll have it to provide very quickly. People don't like to wait, and we don't want people to wait. So that's one of our business goals this year. And these are all colonial stocks here, but we do have a handful of mountain rifle stocks on this rack. Here are some of an example of our mountain rifle stocks. This is a piece of walnut, real nice piece of walnut, good and dense, and it has a little bit of figure in it, which is kind of nice. You can see how much slimmer our mountain rifle stock is than our colonial rifle stocks. The later period rifle, a little different style, smaller caliber guns. So here is a workbench that I use. It's an old cast iron layout table, so it's very heavy and very stable. And this vise arrangement is pretty unique in that, for several reasons. The first is that it's a ball and socket arrangement, so you can pivot it around and move it around and then lock it back in place. And it's mounted to this pin, so this pin and these bushings, it can be all raised up or down depending on the height you want to work at. People will often talk about vise height, and you know, I don't think there's really an ideal. For some jobs you want it higher, and some jobs you want it lower, especially for heavy work. You want it to be lower. For finer work, a little higher is better for me. So it works very well. And this is also been modified in that the front jaw will pivot on a shoulder bolt, so you can grab non-parallel items such as a gun stock. So it's real handy, works well.
If someone wanted a vise like this, where would they go?
Yeah, this is one that that I made. I had a little help with some of the machine work, but it's pretty much something that's custom made. You can find smaller, like Wilton made a power arm fixture that's a little smaller, and it might be okay. It's a little smaller, lighter duty, but I like the mass for strength, and also just for rigidity and vibration, to try to keep the vibration down. So I wanted something that's pretty good size. This happens to be made, the ball is a shot put, which is something that's unique. A 16-pound shot put, and then it's just the rest of the parts were machined out. So it's kind of neat. And one of the most important things is the lamp here. This is an old articulating arm lamp. This might be a Luxo, I think it might be. And I try to find these occasionally. I need to buy some more, but I like to try to find them on eBay or wherever I can, Craigslist or something, because yeah, this is a Luxo lamp, and it's a good quality vintage one. It has a long reach. My switch is going bad in it though. It has a long reach, so I can move it. I have it on a base, a heavy base. That base can just be slid around the table. It's very, very important to have a good quality light that you can move around while you're working. I teach classes, and that's something that I constantly talk about, is the importance of lighting. And people always don't seem to understand, so so I'm going to harp on it more and more. And low angle cross lighting to see what you're doing, and you know, you can only make it as good as you can see it. So make it look basically as bad as you can with the light, and then you can do as good a work as you can. So, and then we have well, let's move on to the wax machine now. So we talked about how, or showed you examples of our stocks and the basic general procedure and how we make our stocks. But you know, there are a lot of metal parts that go with the gun as well. Some of those are made by investment casting. It's sometimes referred to as wax casting. And over here I can show you our wax injection station, where we inject waxes to make some of the parts. Some of the parts we machine, the metal parts we machine, but other of the parts we use investment casting. And that's important because some of the shapes, such as trigger guards and butt plates and you know, some different parts are complex, and to machine them it wouldn't be practical. It would be very, the cost would be prohibitive. And investment casting works very well for those parts. So I'll talk about the molds first. The basic process is we have to make a mold with a cavity that mimics the part we want to make. And this is a trigger guard mold, and it's split in two. It's a little dirty right now, needs cleaned up. The process of making these is you have to produce a master first. And these are aluminum shells that are dowel pinned together. So, and then they're epoxy cord. So it's hard to go, it's kind of a complex to describe the process to make these in detail, but the general gist is you make your master and you pour epoxy around it half at a time, and then that mold then is used for the wax injection. You can see there's some machining that's done for gates and the tabs and so forth, and a entry point for the wax and screws that hold it together. But that's the basic procedure. So it closes up and we inject wax through that hole there. We just use these little socket head cap screws to hold it shut. It's a little tight. Okay, so this mold is ready to inject into. You have to have a machine that can inject the wax. So this is a wax injector that was made by Drew Hedgecock in North Carolina. He's he's getting a little older now, but he's a gun parts supplier and made these wax injection machines for sale for a lot of years, and made ramrod drills and set triggers, and I think he still does some of it, but he is getting a little older now. It's a real good machine. Been pretty much, it's just worked without problems. So the general principle of the machine is wax is held in this cylinder here. So that cartridge has wax in it. I can show you. So here's think of this as a caulking tube. There's wax that's in this cylinder, and this box just preheats the wax. This jacket is held at a uniform temperature. The wax ends up being sort of a paste. And this is a cylinder down here. Applies pressure to the bottom of the wax tube like a caulk gun. It's an air cylinder, and it pressurizes it at quite a bit of pressure. I forget the exact amount, but when you figure the ratios of the cylinder sizes, it's several hundred psi, between I believe 200 to 300 psi is what the wax pressure is. And then there's I'm going to have to go turn on the air compressor. And then there's a air cylinder on the top, you can see, that holds the mold down against the nozzle. So this is a valve that controls the flow of the wax, and this is where the wax exits. So we'll put a mold on here, bring this air cylinder down to hold it against the nozzle and open it up. I'm going to swing her, well, that'll be fine like that.
Can you talk about why you opened it slow and closed it fast? And...
You know, the rate at which the wax enters the mold can affect how it fills it. And if you pull it off the injector too soon, you can lose some pressure with it leading out the hole. So each particular mold has a sort of its own characteristic and how it likes to be run for good parts. So different things like that can affect you know, the wax that you get. You sort of have it, I sort of have an idea of maybe putting some CNC controls on the wax injector that'll, you know, you could pick out a particular job and it would do all that automatically, which would be a good thing because when you have employees, it's not always easy to get consistency. And anytime you can have things that are automated like that, it works well. So you need to give this a little bit of time to cool, which this mold was pretty cool since it hadn't been run previously, so the wax should be pretty good. So I'm going to open it up, just pull these cap screws out. And this mold can sometimes be a little tricky to get the wax out of, so hopefully I don't struggle too much here. Came out very nice. So you can see half of it. So now we're going to get our fingers on this and work it out. There, it's coming out. So you can see this is a wax for our mountain rifle, and it's of course a trigger guard. So these will then, we have to have a wax piece for every casting. So if we want 100 castings, we need to make 100 waxes. These we take to a foundry, and then the foundry pours these, each wax using the investment casting process. And I'm going to turn off that air compressor and I'll maybe describe the investment casting process a little bit. So with the investment casting process, each part is attached to a tree, and the tree can be thought of as just a central, maybe a trunk in a simplified fashion. So this is melted onto the tree, so you have a larger wax piece down the center that's your sprue, and a whole bunch of these parts all over this tree. Then this tree is dipped in ceramic. Basically a ceramic shell is formed over the wax part. And then the wax is removed from the ceramic shell by melting it out, more or less. And so you have a shell that's sort of the shape of the parts, all your parts. Metal can be poured in that ceramic shell, and then after the metal solidifies, the ceramic shell can be broken off and parts cut from that tree. That's just an overview of the investment casting process. It's again very important for the firearms industry, especially the muzzleloading industry. And I can grab a few parts to show you what they look like when they're cast. So here is a mountain rifle trigger guard, like you saw the wax piece. Here's a brass colonial rifle trigger guard. There's an entry pipe.
And you have to incorporate shrinkage in when you do these, make them oversized, right?
You do, yeah. There is some shrinkage involved in the investment casting process, so you have to account for that when making the molds. And you know, it can be a time-consuming process to make the molds, and it's not easy to do. It takes some time. And the masters too. Your parts are only as good as your masters. So some parts are not investment cast, some parts are machined. And machining is very good in that it's more precise than investment casting, but it can be more difficult to accomplish. And especially for irregular parts, like a lot of gun parts are, especially parts that are made in the form of 18th or 19th century gun parts. So it can be challenging. But within the last year or so, we've invested in a metalworking CNC machine, and we're continually producing more and more parts on this machine, and it works very well. And you can see it here to my right. So it's been a very good machine for us. We're really happy to have it, and it's showing its benefits, and over time it'll keep showing its benefits more and more. The results that it can produce are pretty amazing, to be honest. And it all depends on your ability to operate the machine, which isn't easy. Program the machine and so forth and so on, but it's a huge benefit to our business. These machines are costly, but it's you know, they pay for themselves, and they help us have a better business, and it's keeping up with technology and keeping up with the times, basically, is what it is. I'll show you a few examples of some of the parts that come off the machine over here. This is a part that we recently started machining, and this is a breech plug in Tang for our mountain rifles. It's a complex part to make. You can see it has a draft on all the sides, if you can see that or not, but this has a draft and this has a draft, and it's just pretty irregular in a lot of ways. Not many straight lines, but we've successfully made parts off of it, and the parts have worked very well, and they fit our stocks very well. So an advantage of machining parts with CNC is that they fit a CNC machine stock, and they're very precise and very, very close. So it's just the right thing to do, and we're really happy to be using it and moving in that direction. A few other examples of them here. We also have recently started machining triggers. So this whole trigger assembly is 100% machined. No castings are used on it. And it's a, you know, it's much better that it is 100% machined. The tolerances are much closer, the fit and finish is much better, and you can feel it. It shows when the trigger is operated. Triggers are much more consistent, so we're very happy with these. So let's, over here, we kind of glanced over the outfeed table on the big bandsaw. This just shows some guns that are in process here. Shows how many we're working on at various times. This one is partially carved, and the rest are more or less just assembled in the white, which is a service that we offer with our kits. Some real nice wood on these. This one here happens to be a piece of wood from a tree that grew in my grandma and grandpa's front yard, which is kind of neat. And this one here, maybe I can roll it around a little bit. You can see a bit of the carving. The lighting probably isn't great here, but you may be able to pick up on a little bit of it. This is one that I started a while ago. I need to get working on it again, and it's probably not a bad thing that it sat around a little bit, because I've been looking at, shit, I guess that guard wasn't in there. I've been looking at it a little bit, and I think the carving needs to go just a little deeper. So I'm going to relieve a little more of the background, I believe, and make the carving stand a little higher before I start shaping it out. Over here is one that we recently have just finished up, which is one of our colonial rifle kits. And you can see this one has been made to look like an original rifle, more or less. So it's been aged and has patina applied. This is one that Catherine and I worked together on with the finishing. Catherine's running the camera here, which worked real well. You can roll it over and you can, there's the top. You can see some of the other side here. Maybe I'll just flip it around to the other end here. Here is where we do some of the metal work, where we process raw castings. So we have a bandsaw where you can cut off gates, bead blaster, belt grinder. We have a surface grinder in the back corner there as well, which we use occasionally. And some grinders for deburring and things of that nature. Back here, nothing real exciting, but important to the process. Okay, moving around the corner here, we have a vertical manual milling machine. It's an index mill, a Wells index mill, which it's showing its age, but for certain manual jobs, it works real well. And we have some heat treat equipment in the back corner here. One is just a kiln, an ordinary pottery kiln, but we've added a controller to it so it can maintain temperature and you can program ramp rates and so forth. And then another smaller furnace here. And then a little grizzly lathe for making just small parts, screws, that sort of thing. The odd jobs. Over in this area is where we pack up all of our kits or anything that needs shipped. And so we have most of our stuff on the shelf here, and you can see how we pack up our kits. We pack them in nice plywood boxes that keep them safe in transit and take a lot of care, you know, from the start to the finish. That's one thing that we like to convey, is that we really want to make the best product we can and do everything that we're capable of to accomplish that. And we keep moving in that direction. We're not satisfied and just keep moving forward to produce a better and better product and run a better and better business. So that's pretty much the highlights of our business here at Kibler's Long Rifles, and we're happy to share it with you. And if you have any questions or comments, you know, please let us know. Thanks. Okay.